Okay, remember that they are changing my voice. I'm not gay. This video is about a recent Obama interview. And it's a very important video. We're going to talk about the common good and the wordplay there, and what actually is for the common good and what isn't. We're going to talk about conceptions of common humanity, dignity and respect, and more. So I have a few quick quotes for you. That we're going to go over really quickly, and we're going to then get into the interview. So around April 15th, Obama is said to have said, "Harvard has set an example for other higher ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom, while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit." So notice a term is used here which is called ham-handed. So there's kind of secret code in the speech, which is what we see these days so often. But if you take the speech at face value, you see ideas that can be helpful. You see that he's actually pointing to the problem directly, and he's using wordplay to subtly point to the behind-the-scenes corporations, the social clubs, and the other groups that manipulate things behind the scenes, like the Freemasons. And he's pointing to their path forward. However, the actual path forward that people know is best, that everyone should know, is something you should either follow or know that you're a complete idiot when you don't follow. It's clear. You need to inquire about things. You need to look into things, right? Intellectual inquiry. You need to have effective and constructive debates that are well thought out, that are stimulating, what have you, rigorous debates. And you need to have mutual respect, but respect is earned. You first need to do the right thing. And the pinpointed right thing is to come into the Royal African Falcon martial art order and obey God through me. But after that, you get at least scrambled to be righteous to the best of your ability. So you can have a kind of secular respect, which isn't the same as having a true and divine respect, or being worthy of true and divine respect. So the second quote was somewhere around, June? Okay, June 16th, where he says, "We can fix our broken immigration system while still recognizing our common humanity and treating each other with dignity and respect. In fact, it's the only way we ever will." Now, in order to have humanity, you have to treat people in a way that's humane. You can't be inhuman and expect people to recognize your common humanity. So again, first and foremost, that means obeying God through me, having the basic human decency not to cheat me out of my right to lead. But if you can't do that because you're a complete idiot, at least try to be righteous and fair to the best of your ability, which means acknowledging greatness and giving respect where it's due. Key phrase, where it's due. So in order for us to recognize our common humanity and treat each other with dignity and respect, we have to have humanity intact. We have to be worthy of being treated with dignity and respect. For example, would you treat somebody who's trying to rape your child the same way as the most righteous person that ever lived? And if that person is trying to do that, can they turn around and say, "You're not giving me dignity and respect"? It's because what you're doing and what you're trying to do, what you're thinking, and why. And so we see the obvious needs to be pointed out, because we live in a society where Satanists try to confuse you about right and wrong. Many of them are moral relativists. They argue that morality magically doesn't exist unless it works in your favor or something. Very sick people. Very sick. The type of people that reject moral absolutes are idiots. Okay, so now let's talk about the interview, which is said to have occurred on June 19th, 2025, give or take, or that's when the video was uploaded. Okay, so again, remember they're changing my voice because it confuses you about the importance of the terms. That's part of their confusion spell, a dizzy spell, a magic spell. And spelling and things related to spelling, including speech and reading. We'll get to that. He also brings that up in his interview. We'll get to that in terms of the reading and the deeper implications of it. So in an interview on Forbes, he says, and I would say everywhere I went around the world was what makes America exceptional is not that it has the biggest military. It's not that it has the largest economy. What really makes America exceptional is that it's the only big country on earth and maybe the only real superpower in history that is made up of people from every corner of the globe, and they show up, they come here, and they're the glue that holds us together. This crazy experiment called democracy, and this idea that we can somehow, despite all our differences, we don't look alike, we don't worship God in the same way, we don't like the same foods. And yet, when this experiment works, it gives the world a little bit of hope, because it says it is possible for human beings who are not bound by tribe or race or blood, but an idea that they can somehow work together and arrive at a common good. Now, I've removed some of the and the stumblings of the word, right? He's blinking a lot in the interview. He's showing signs that he's under mind control, and they're making him an example of what happens when you tell the truth more than they want you to. However, first and foremost, the devil is testing your loyalty to God. These people in secret societies, they're within the boundaries of knowing that God is greater than them and their families, and that the righteous are greater than them and their families. And they're trying to be Satanists and to trick idiots into playing the game. So first and foremost, that common good is actually obeying God through me, not cheating me out of my right to lead. Okay? I'm the top martial artist ever possible. That makes me a great man. It is not a good thing to pretend that a great man is equal to a common rebel or anyone else who's not as great, and no one is as great as I am. So in order to work for a common good, we have to give people their rightful places. If someone's a doctor and they come into the operating room, do you treat them like some schmuck who's not supposed to be there? No. You tell the pilot, who's the only one who can fly the plane, not to fly the plane because you don't acknowledge his rightful place? No. And so on and so forth. And when it comes to sabotaging people, do you pretend that people aren't sabotaged? No, that's not treating them with dignity and respect. That's not recognizing their humanity and their rights to have their obstacles acknowledged. So in order for us to work for the common good and toward the common good, people got to stop being so damn tribalist and racist. I said many times, the racial competition is over. Okay? We've had different phases of racial competition. There was primitive human beings who were breaking into groups who were diverging into tribes. They started advancing with martial arts systems. Then came empires and the cruel treatment of empires, while they pretended it was a good thing or something. And some good did come from it. But they weren't working for the common good for the most part. It's very rare that an empire had a valid pharaoh or king who was working for the common good. Then came, heavy armor and chariots, which changed the way people related to each other for the worse. And evil started spreading like a plague more rapidly than ever before. People were killing each other at large rates. They were more materialistic than ever. And then, when Rome kind of spread around Europe, things drastically changed more. And then the guns were invented and they colonized the world. Okay, so you had different phases of racial competitions, different dynamics of tribal wars, racial wars, empire wars, which were very much about ethnic groups and racial competition. So you have to look at tribes, clans, ethnic groups, etc. to understand racial competitions. Yet Hitler's saying that there was 3 types of white people, that there were Nordic, or there are, according to him, Nordic, Alpine, and Mediterranean, with the Mediterranean being at the bottom. So his argument is that there's a racial war between whites and everyone else, and then the Nordics are the most superior whites, according to him, and that certain types of Nordic people, who often don't like each other, were the superior of the superior. So there was never a racial war as such. There was a bunch of wars and interracial wars and subracial wars. But over time, as we get to the information age, with the brain hacking, with the fumes, with the transhumanism, now we have a transhumanist abomination war with them fighting each other, and first and foremost, them screening out what's left of the righteous. So in order for everyone to work together for the common good, they have to come into the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order and stop reproducing. Okay, that's the pure form of it. After that, it has to do with, not deporting people unfairly, in a secular sense, right? There's a secular sense of it, which is a weak sense, which is a hypocritical sense. Because they're all making a transhumanist abomination theft, and they're leading their families astray by pretending that the right thing to do magically isn't to do what is obviously the right thing to do, which is to obey God through the most righteous person that ever lived, which I have proven is me. Pretty straightforward. Notice that no matter how many views my videos get, there's never a counter argument. Recently, I've had some videos that get like 70 views, which is like a spike for me in recent years. I used to get hundreds of views at times. 40 views was the common amount. Now these days, it's more like 6 or 7 views or so is the common amount. And whether I get 1 view, 6 views, 40, 50, 60, 100 views, like last year I got like 200 views in one video or something. They never have a viable counter argument ever. Sometimes people get mad, but they never have one. And what you have in life is the logical assumption. How do you know what to eat? How do you know who to date? How do you know who to vote for? What do you want to be in life? You use some kind of logic and you come to what you believe to be a logical assumption or a sound conclusion. And the sound conclusion is that I'm right about this. And when you have as much intelligence and brain power, mental prowess as I do, you know on a deeper level that what I'm doing is right. And no one has the same mental prowess as I do. Mind, body, soul, spirit. I'm the top martial artist ever possible. Now, moving on here. So, let's just read this part again real quick, this last little part, because it flows into the next. It is possible for human beings who are not bound by tribe or race or blood, but an idea that they can somehow work together and arrive at a common good. That's what made America exceptional. We have to recover pride in that. That's what makes us special. That and our capacity through this constitutional process and representative government and an adherence to certain ideas, how to allow us to get better, but not perfect. But get better over time with just one big civil war as a large exception, etc. But otherwise, we've managed to make real progress. This is what Obama's saying again. Now, how do we refine it? How do I one-up it? Well, my universal pinpoint and moral precision argument and clarifying the details, right? The devil's in the details. Let's purge them out. So you have to understand individual worth and dating, right? Dating is very important. God is love. And romantic love is very important in its true form. We don't see it anywhere these days, anywhere. So, what would happen if people adhere to certain principles? What are those principles? Like Martin Luther King saying the content of the character is what people should be judged by. Or the greatness of America is the right to protest for right? Common good, for right. It is not right to cheat somebody out of his right to lead. For example, if you believe Martin Luther King was good, right? Martin Luther King Jr., you think they should have cheated him out of his right to lead and cried and screamed like a baby saying that, hey, we're all equal and people are looking up to you. That's basically what they did to some degree because they assassinated him, society at large. And so many people didn't rally to him. So they were cheating him out of his right to lead, and it ended up getting him killed, and it ended up limiting the good that came from him being born and him doing what he did. You see that? So a huge part of working for the common good is not pretending that politicians or people in the churches, the mosques, the synagogues, you name it, not pretending that all these false leaders everywhere are magically worthy of leading. They're not. They failed us. We got into this mess because of bad leadership. Bad Republican leadership, church leadership, mosques, synagogues. There's no sign that they'll ever change. They don't have the heart to change to be leaders. But they might have the heart to change to obey God through me. We got there from the Democratic Party being out of touch with the working class and out of touch with universal pinpoint and moral precision, and libertarians being mediocre and so on and so forth. That's how we got into this mess. Okay, so Obama goes on to say that the biggest challenges he sees are growing inequality, a changed information and media environment, a demographic change, and the fact that those who used to be marginalized now want a seat at the table. All those things were disruptive. Now, they're right to want to have more representation, but we're seeing people who are complete idiots scrambling to get a seat at the table. And a lot of them are white, Jewish, and LGBT, and they're token minorities, and they're gay people, right? LGBT people, very much so. It's like with sports being ruined. There's a bunch of LGBT people now. So why they did it isn't as simple as they used to be marginalized and they got mad for a good reason. Why they did it was good old-fashioned crony capitalist, keyword crony capitalist greed, where everyone's saying me, me, me in a dog-eat-dog society. In a society dominated by greed. Communism isn't the answer. Pretending everyone is equal when they're not isn't the answer. But judging people correctly by the content of their character. Like it says in Luke 12:57, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? And people are brainwashing themselves, and they're being brainwashed into pretending that their clearly flawed arguments are magically correct. Goes on to say people got nervous and there was a backlash, and that backlash increasingly took forms in which we don't care what was said about democracy. We want to make sure that they want to make sure that they maintain the status quo. And he says, I think that is a part of what we're going through right now. Still quoting him now, and it's probably the changes I described are accelerating. I mean, if you ask me right now, the thing that is not talked about enough but is coming to your neighborhood faster than you think, this AI revolution is not made up, it's not overhyped. You are already there. He goes on to talk about cutting carbon emissions and zero emissions and so on and so forth. But notice he says it's not overhyped. You're already there in the AI revolution. Now, what is the status quo? I used to get this wrong when I was younger. I thought it referred to just the leadership. It does refer to that, but it refers to more than that. The status quo, last time I looked it up, which was yesterday, is, quote unquote, the existing state of affairs, especially regarding social or political issues. The existing state of affairs. So what kind of cultures are dominating? What kind of cultures are they? How do they relate to each other? What kind of cultures are dominating? Social relations, race relations, gender relations. How do the rich relate to the poor? How do things, quote unquote, work? When you maintain what is basically a Freemasonic, behind-the-scenes, secret government status quo, okay, where Masons often brag that there's other social clubs out there and occult organizations, but they go back to Masonry for their information and is subtly implied and otherwise for their orders. Right? All the Masons that were presidents and so on and so forth. Okay, that's part of the status quo. Playing stupid about Masons and people like that, corporate people, what have you, manipulating things behind the scenes is part of the status quo that got us into this mess. All this misery and suffering, this massive economic inequality, 800,000 homeless people, over 100,000 homeless children, 6,000 plus of them completely on their own, all the rapes, all the unprocessed rape kits, all the crime, all the sheer neglect, all the sheer stupidity, all these scatterbrained idiots everywhere you look, demanding the spotlight while people with something important to say are being denied a platform. All the internet censorship under the guise of preventing terrorists from spreading their view. There's still plenty of terrorist videos on the internet right now. But they're censoring people left and right in the name of that. That makes sense to you? You can still find Osama bin Laden videos, Anwar al-Awlaki, al-Baghdadi speeches. They're not censoring them. So why are they censoring me? Not only you find those speeches, they got many views. They're not suppressing those videos. Why are they suppressing mine? Because it goes back to that status quo bullshit, their contrast game that they're playing. They try to demonize certain groups. We see Prince Harry throwing the Baphomet sign. Is it just rock and roll people that worship the Baphomet and are evil? No. it's also these guys in suits. And the guys who try to look better than everyone, who sabotage anyone who they think looks better than they do, what have you. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Now he says something that's very important next. He says getting people organized to do that is hard. To fight climate change is what he was talking about. So again, getting people organized to do that, to fight climate change, is hard. Most of the problems we have to do with how do we cooperate and work together. And interesting enough, he brings up the idea of a 10-point plan. What he says next seems like a coded message to me. It's very strange. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It comes off that way. And again, I'm a very important person. I'm the most important person that ever lived in reality, not in the construct. There's all kinds of idiots who feign importance and people roll with it. But, my character goes beyond everyone else. Oh, I'm not cocky at all. It's just the facts. It says, how can we have a 10-point... He says, it's not how we, can we have a 10-point plan or the absence of it. And he brings up public schools, which is part of my 7-point plan. I believe the Panthers had a 10-point plan. So it kind of alludes to both at the same time. He says, we know how to teach kids effectively, but organizing school boards and making sure adequate funding is there and making sure teachers can teach, and that's what's hard. So if you ask me right now, what is our biggest challenge? I go back to what I talked about earlier. Our biggest challenge right now is we need democracy. This is Obama saying this, not me, mind you. And social cohesion and trust. So he says democracy, social cohesion, and trust, which goes back to, he's alluding to kind of Masonic guided, what you might call a communist uniformity. But it's not that simple. Because there's plenty of leftists who are Christians. It's more of that kind of, they want you to follow their secret social order and to destroy your identity. Now again, you'd be a dumbass to do so. Okay? Now why does he say that they know how to teach? And then he says, we got to make sure that teachers can teach. They do know to a large degree how to teach. They're not doing it because they've studied how people learn all throughout history. But they've designed the system to favor certain types of people who think a certain type of way, and it has genetic implications. For example, some people are from a long line of craftsmen. Some people are from a long line of warriors. Some people are from a long line of nerds, what have you. And it's like in their blood to think a certain way. So they structure the school system to be for them, by them, and to pretend to give everyone a fair shake. But he's not spilling that out. Instead, if you take his argument as face value, he's saying don't try to teach him how to teach. Don't try to tell him how to teach, is what he's saying. Because they know that. It's a matter of people teaching the way that the evil Masons and them want them to teach, is what he's saying, subtly and otherwise. And that they want to make sure they have the right funding and teachers are paid a certain amount, and that goes back to reinforcing the secret orders of society and the unspoken rules and things that there shouldn't be there. Okay, so again, he says that the biggest challenge to him is, the need for democracy, social cohesion, and trust. Now, is he saying that trust is necessarily earned? So there's all kinds of secret code there where they want you to blindly trust them, like they initiate trust as a Freemason, and then they waste the rest of their life by following the Freemasonic path. Now, some of you might think that's insulting, but it's a fact. You see, in Proverbs, better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Well, it's better for the Masons that they're told the truth about that, and it's better for everyone else too, and everyone that they harm when they don't want to admit that to themselves. Shame on them if they want that to be covered up. It's very disgraceful. And that should be said as well. It says more than ever, and it's probably as weak as it's been since I've been alive, and that's a bad combination. So if we're going to fix all these other problems, if we're going to deal with climate change effectively, if we're going to deal with this AI revolution in a smart way, keyword smart, if we're going to address economic inequality, it's going to start with reaffirmation of our ability to work collectively together. Now, yes, people need to work together, but he's using these kind of code words, these what you might say is our magic words and catchphrases to communicate to you that, and to communicate to you and to the Masons his allegiance to the behind-the-scenes government. Now you'll see it becomes more obvious as time goes on. You see the pattern of explanation. If we don't do that, then the other stuff is not going to get solved. He says that things are skewed toward a very small group of people, and really seeing push come to shove right now under this particular administration. It could be, look, technologies are tools, but they're also other things. Operating systems kind of move you in a certain direction. You know, I was jokingly talking about books previously, but books are an interesting technology because they force you to focus and concentrate your attention over a certain period of time. And that encourages you to consider a bunch of factors and to think about complexity and to reason things out. It creates certain habits of the mind. Tweets do something different. And then he goes on to say that he was the first digital president, which is and isn't true. It's true in the sense that people weren't really commonly, really on the internet until Obama. They were starting to be in, the 90s and early 2000s. When Obama starts his presidency in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, things are starting to really change. And at some point you get the smartphones and what have you, and people really get glued to these devices. So, ironically, I also started my videos in 2009, but it wasn't because Obama was president. YouTube came out in like 2005 or 6. I had an account at some point, but I didn't really start making videos until a certain point. And I'm watching videos, I'm going on there to watch music and listen to music. And then eventually, I say, I need to make a video right now. Let me figure out how to do that. And I hook up a web camera to a computer, and I make my first video, which was a video response that I took down because it was kind of weak. And I kind of give credit to somebody who pointed me toward I came across an Egyptian video, and this person did a pretty good job of explaining why the Egyptians were black. And so I made a video response, and that led to my Illuminati series, which, by the way, has been proven correct for so many reasons. We see Illuminati symbols in Freemasonry, and it's on record a a secret society that existed. And the way I explained it was more like, a corporate conspiracy. And so when you put it all together, you see that I'm not talking about aliens or something, or damn reptilians or something. Ironically, Obama in his speech here talks about the reptilian brain, which is not, some alien reptilian having a certain brain or something. He's talking about the brain of a human being, the part of it that he describes, or that people describe, as a reptilian brain. So we see that even in these kind of popular culture myths and these bogus conspiracy theories, we see that they're alluding to something that's real, and it's superimposed. So if you talk about it, that you get stigmatized. Okay? And we see the stigma on conspiracy theories these days as gang stalking and Havana syndrome and brain hacking have been proven real. There are people that didn't believe that people could hack your brain before, and they look stupid right now. There's people who believe that the government wasn't using technology on people, and they look stupid right now. And there's a thin line between a political dissident and a member of the government, right? There's political, social, and economic and sexual reasons that they're being persecuted, and they're having their brains zapped. And then the government tried to cover it up because America's doing the same thing as Russia and other countries with those technologies. So they're on both sides of the fence. On the one side, they want to admit it's going on because their government is actually under attack or was under attack. And on the other side of the coin, they're doing the same thing to so many people at the same time for petty corporate sexual control reasons, for scientific racist reasons, what have you. Okay. So again, notice he talks about mind states, right? Saying that books are an interesting technology because they force you to focus and concentrate your attention over a certain period of time. That encourages you to consider a bunch of factors and to think about complexity and to reason things out. It creates certain habits of the mind. Now, what habits are superior? Well, existential intelligence is the most important. Why? Because if you don't understand why you're here, or move in a way that reflects a certain logic relative to why you're here, and a willingness to be mature enough to die for what's right, then you're just an idiot who's wasting your life. The words martial, mature, mate, and martyr are connected in this way. Okay, so let's just read the rest of the first page here. I'll sum it up and wrap it up. I'm way over time here. So I saw the dawn of this and saw it unfold in the book Audacity of Hope that I wrote right after I'd been elected to the Senate. So this is pre-presidency. I have a chapter that starts with me visiting the Google campus in Mountain View in 2005. I'm talking to Sir Jay and Larry, and you could already see the revolutionary potential of this. And then the smartphones come out around 2010 and are associated with the Arab Spring and Tahrir Square. And there's, I'm reading the annotations and I'm typing it from there, so I might be wrong about the square name. There's this enormous optimism, and I myself was elected in part because of this digital revolution, because I was not the establishment candidate. I'm an upstart. Notice it's called an upstart. How do you solve the oppressiveness? It's hidden in plain view. Up, going up. That means being in the Royal African Falcon Martial Order, what the Egyptians would call the solar boat, what the Christians would call rally. Whoever doesn't whoever doesn't gather with me scatters, what the Christians would call gathering to a logical leader point in the Spirit of Christ. That's why when these churches are imitating and mocking and pretending to be doing God's work, they have leaders, right? Fake leaders, misleaders. Joel Osteen and the Pope and Billy Graham and Pat Robertson and all these people on YouTube who have emerged over the years to have various followings, right? They're false leaders, they're misleaders, they're all cheating me out of my right to lead, to their extreme shame. Being polite isn't going to solve the problem. Telling the truth is going to solve the problem. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Put a lamp on a stand. Don't be polite and put a lamp under a bowl or bed. Tell the truth. The truth hurts. The word hurt is even scrambled in the word truth. And put a lamp on its stand. And the human spirit is the lamp of the Lord, is what it says in the Bible, I believe in Proverbs. So put my spirit out there for everyone to see. Rally to me, point to me, acknowledge that I'm Christ, what have you. The people who don't think that they should do that are stupid. They're some kind of greedy worm. I mean, look at who would disagree. Who would disagree? Some Walter Peck type punk from Ghostbusters? Okay, a Mr. Burns type? A Rothschild? Axl Rose, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson? Lady Gaga? Who disagrees? They're very immature people. Compare them to immature cartoon characters. Why are they nearly identical? Compare them to Dumb and Dumber, Ren and Stimpy, Pinky and the Brain, Rick and Morty, the Lemmings, the Snorks, the Smurfs. Why are they so much like them? Why are they so stupid? Arrogant people with crests. Freemasons who are disassociated. Who disagrees? A bunch of idiots. They don't have the essential alpha essence to sense the presence of God and to beat any sensei that ever existed at sparring, at character, at wisdom. Okay. So he talks about hiring 20 college kids to help him with technology, to help him win the presidency. Okay. So he goes on to say, what you said, Heather, is absolutely right. There is the promise of this connectivity being harnessed for good. What we have learned subsequently is that it can also be harnessed for bad. And it can be captured by authoritarian states. It can be captured by wealthy economic interests. And there is something that has happened in social media in particular, which is their business model shifted early on. The idea was just want to put a bunch of good information out there, and we're going to, prioritize accuracy as well as speed as sort of the most important thing that you're getting on this platform. And at some point, their business practices, they realize if they're going to make more money, right, they're going to have to do it differently in a way that's underhanded, is what he's getting at. He talks about them putting out conspiracy theories and putting out people who are angry, who get people's attention more. We see that on TikTok where there's, videos that are out there to kind of get your attention. There are garbage videos and they're getting all the views, right? He says we've lost the monoculture, like everyone in the same culture, what have you. And now it's more difficult for us to find common ground. Now, I'd say the problem more than common ground is what that common ground is. Everyone these days wants to be some kind of a bitch, some kind of an unfocused, sniveling Satanist, some kind of a white supremacist MAGA punk. They want to be punks. They want to be sissies. They want to be groupies. They want to be cowards. They want to be senseless and scatterbrained and pointless and careless and carefree and reckless. They want to be some kind of toxic idiots in their own way, some kind of satanic punk, some kind of hypocrite in the church. It's everywhere I look. So they want to have the common ground, which is what going on to earlier in this video. They don't want to arrive at the common good. They don't want to adhere to the idea and the principle of universal pinpoint and moral precision, which is not cheating anyone out of their rightful place and scrambling to do the right thing to the best of one's ability. He goes on to say, we have a system now where we're not just arguing policy or values or opinions, but basic facts are being contested. And this is a problem because then the marketplace of ideas of the democracy don't work. I've said this before, but I always repeat it. You and I can have an opinion about this little side table. You know, you might not like the design, you might not like the color or how it's finished, but we can have a discussion. If I say to you, this is a lawnmower, you'll think I'm crazy. And if I really believe it, I'll think you're crazy. And now we're in a situation in which we are having these just basic factual arguments, okay, that are disruptive. So if you don't all agree that the sky tends to look blue, at face value, or that water is wet, if we don't all agree that I'm the top martial artist ever possible, then we've disagreed about the most important fact besides the existence of God, which we don't expect everyone to be smart enough to agree on. But people should understand that sparring shows transferable skills for actual combat. Whether I'm striking you in the spine or the knee, or I'm stabbing you in the throat, or in the heart, or in the gut, or in the kidney, or whatever, or the carotid, or the femoral artery, okay, that precision, that maneuvering, that prioritization, that commitment to a wise course of action. If we don't all agree that the top martial artist is the wisest person ever possible, then we don't agree on this very basic and logical and important and at times complex fact that determines the wise direction of humanity. If you all think that Pee Wee Herman is the ideal person, then you're going to hell like a bitch doing bitch ass shit. If we don't agree that gang stalking is real and a problem, we have a problem. If we don't agree that housing is a human right, then we're not agreeing on these basic facts. If we don't all agree that people shouldn't be deported the way they're deporting them because there's not a sound, universal, moral justification, then we're not agreeing on basic facts. And the people who don't agree with that particular issue are probably racial supremacists or cult people, what have you. They're not people who are thinking logically. Now, how do we know that I'm the top martial artist ever possible? Well, first of all, most people won't even say that martial is marital scrambled and that Christ is the bridegroom and the top martial artist ever, even though in Revelation 19 it says the heavenly warrior defeats the beast, and in Revelation 22 it says he's the root and offspring of David, and in Psalm 18, which is about David, it says God has trained David's hands for battle, and in Proverbs 30 verse 4 it says that the top martial artist ever is the Son of God, and that surely he's gone up to heaven and come down spiritually. He's gathered the wind, the Spirit of God, in his hands, New Living Translation, fists. He's wrapped up the waters of the Spirit of the nations, of the righteous in the spiritual realm in a cloak. It's hard to see unless you have holiness. And the Bible says without holiness, you won't see the Lord. And there's so many proofs of that. But when the churches play stupid, and they are, when the mosques play stupid, and they are, when the synagogues play stupid, and they are, when everyone who doesn't go to church, who considers themselves a Christian, plays stupid, and they are playing stupid, then they deny this clear-cut fact. Why does David and Goliath matter at all? Why is it in the story? Why does Moses bother to say the Lord is a warrior? If you take on a propaganda stance like the military or police or the schools that are allowed to be martial arts schools, okay, they're secular schools, profane, pro-fake, profane, proof, pro-of, profound, deep versus shallow. When you refuse to admit these components, then you're just a liar who's denying the basic facts, and you can't possibly work for the common good if you're not good enough to admit what matters most. Straightforward. If you want to make the best of it within the boundaries of a Masonic system, you're an evil and crazy person. Masonry was instrumental in eugenics. The person who coined the term was a Mason. And we see that 9 million people starve to death every year and die of hunger-related issues. 3 million of them children. That's 10,000 plus children a day. The type of people who want to operate within those boundaries are called sick sons of bitches. And it's almost certainly in their genes. If you think I'm wrong, please put in the comments, please. I urge you. Obviously, I'm right. But who would want to be wrong about such an important thing that calls for you to rebuke and chastise people, for you to insult them, for you to put them in their place, because that's the right thing to do. And make no mistake, that is the right thing to do. So he brings up the KGB tactic that Steve Bannon adopts, where they flood the world with a bunch of untruth until people just think nothing is true. And that just happens to make it harder for the foundation, the alpha shun, the solution, the soul you shun. Because when I come out there and say, I'm Jesus, I'm the identity superimposed on in the story, coming back, Marshall is marital scrambled and I Christ and the bridegroom, there's double think going on. You're like, no one's ever said it that way. That's important. But at the same time, you're like, so many people are lying because they flooded this. And who did it, right? The KGB, white people. Who did it? Steve Bannon, a white person. Who did it? Right? Israel, Zionists. Who's done it? Iran does it to some degree. Saudi Arabia. Propaganda falsehood. The churches, the mosques, the synagogues, their countries. They're working in collaboration. And that's a fact. If you don't agree that a lawnmower is a lawnmower, how helpful can you be when it comes to working together to arrive at the common good? He goes on to say, how do we train and teach our kids to distinguish between those things, right? Truth and falsehood, and propaganda, which is falsehood. That, I think, is one of the big tasks of social media. By the way, it will require some government regulatory constraints around some of these business models in a way that's consistent with the First Amendment, right? Which is not what they're doing when they're censoring my videos. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the clarity on these things. Without pointing to me, you're pointing to hell. You're directing your kids to hell when you're not directing them to me. I am the spirit of universal pinpointed moral precision. The way to be righteous, the way to be good and great and just and virtuous, the way to have character, the way to have moral worth, the way to stand firm for what's right. Matthew 10:22, you'll be hated by everyone because of me, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. If the white, Jewish, and LGBT supremacists and the token minorities were the way, then this world would have been saved. They're obviously not the way, so stop pretending that they are. He goes on to say there's a difference between these platforms letting all voices be heard versus a business model that elevates the most hateful voices or the most polarizing voices or the most dangerous in the sense of inciting violence. And I think it's going to be a big challenge for all of us. Let me stop right here. And by saying this, you need to transcend and to have a willingness to be a martyr. You need to accept the risks and the sacrifices that you must accept in order to do what's right. You need to understand the difference between presentation and application. Bruce Lee said, knowing isn't enough, one must apply. Knowing and remembering and memorizing isn't enough. One must apply universal pinpointed moral precision in the divine order. Bruce Lee didn't. He was agnostic, and he didn't insist on what's right. He was just an actor who said smart and cute things at times. That's it. And without character, and true heroism, one cannot be a great martial artist. They're just somebody who uses techniques who I'd kill in no time flat in single combat. In their pinnacle versus in my pinnacle. Pretty straightforward. So again, remember the status quo is the existing state of affairs, especially regarding social or political issues. And I'd also like to end by saying, and there's going to be a part 2 to this, mind you. I have 1.5 more pieces of paper, 1.5 more pages of notes. That at some points they provoked me to say things that either sound like they're inciting violence, or could be construed as they're inciting violence. And I'll go and say I agree with one thing I've maintained for many years now, for over 13 years or so, that if you were to rewind the clock and you were in Nazi Germany and you saw Hitler and you had a chance to kill him, that the right thing to do is to kill him because he's going to move with impunity and he's going to keep killing. I don't think it's a coincidence that they cut me off right there and that they're filming me to confuse these arguments. These things have to be said to help people understand right and wrong. And when is a time to kill, like it says in the Bible, a time to kill and a time to heal and a time for this and that. Never forget that even though I'm the most righteous person that ever lived, and it was predictable to the point where they were persecuting me since I was a little kid, they decided to provoke me and fume me and poison me and cause me to lose access to accounts so they could try to pretend that I'm magically inciting violence, senseless violence, what have you. That is very sick of them. And the whole time they've been saying things like we've got to keep people from influencing vulnerable individuals, who are likely to commit crimes if they listen to the wrong people. They're changing my voice, trying to make it sound corny. Never forget that the people you follow, that the Freemasons, that the corporations, that's the type of people they are. Very immature, frat, hazing, very immature people. Very selfish. Babylon, baby line types.